I woke up this morning on Mother's Day and saw a video that was supposed to be comedy. It was a young mom who'd made a PowerPoint for her husband about what she wanted for Mother's Day. But it actually kind of was pretty sad because it was all about how she wanted to be alone for the entire day and didn't want her kids around. She didn't want to have to cook or clean or see them or have them cook or clean for her because she wanted them to eat somewhere else. And the whole message of the video was she wanted a day of not being a mother. And I thought that was an incredibly sad way to spend Mother's Day. And I realized that our culture has really sold us a bill of goods about motherhood that doesn't fit what we should strive for as Christian mothers. So today we're going to talk about the top 3 ways that you can destroy motherhood. Welcome to the Mamapologist. This is a safe place for your doubts. Here, apologetics meets discipleship, so join me as we learn to think biblically about how to walk through this life as believers, struggling with tough questions, seeking hope, and finding answers together. As I said, this video about Mother's Day really struck me as being the total opposite of what Christian motherhood should look like. So let's talk quickly, because I know today is Mother's Day and you are busy, but let's talk quickly about the 3 ways you can destroy motherhood, because I know a lot of my listeners are young moms. So we're going to start with number 3. Have wrong expectations. When we have expectations for how a day is going to go or for how others are going to behave, it often sets us up for disappointment because other people have their own expectations, their own agendas, their own emotions that they're dealing with or physical challenges. And we end up creating conflict because our expectations didn't get met. So we need to have proper expectations. One of the things we can expect is that we are raising little sinners. And sinners are going to sin. They're going to have wrong ideas. They're going to be selfish. We are raising little sinners with limited executive functioning skills who are easily dysregulated. What would you expect if someone told you this is the setup? Selfish people who are going to lie, hide, pinch, poke, do whatever they can to get their way, who don't know how to control their behavior, who are easily thrown into chaos. You wouldn't expect it to go well. But somehow we have this picture of motherhood as being this beautiful, easy, peaceful, just romper room kind of parenting. And we miss the messy chaos that is true when we have a house full of sinners. And we lose the joy in parenting because we don't expect them to act that way. Our job as mothers is obviously keep them alive. That's a high priority, but also to help them see their own need for Jesus by seeing us love them like Jesus. Philippians 2 verses 3-4 says, "Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others." I think that is a great theme verse for motherhood. We've got to set aside our own ambitions, our own selfishness, and learn humility in a way that is beyond what most people have ever understood if you're going to do motherhood correctly. You've got to think of the needs of your children above your own needs. And that's a tough priority. And that is a tough job. Which leads us to point number 2. Focus on how hard it is all the time. Motherhood is hard. There's no denying that. It's hard because we're sinners. As well as raising little sinners, We struggle with dying to ourselves. We struggle with that humility and counting others more important than ourselves. So we have to learn to be more Christ-like. James 1, verses 2 through 4 says, "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect, complete, lacking in nothing." The trials of motherhood are real. There's no denying it. But are you counting it as joy? It's hard to be joyful cleaning up vomit. It's hard to be joyful changing poopy diapers. It's hard to be joyful dealing with a rebellious teen. But that's why the joy of the Lord is so important. And I'm preaching to the choir here because I struggle with these things too. So I'm not holding myself up as a perfect example of motherhood. I am learning just as much as anyone else. And I think that's the message that I've been learning, is that I still have to grow. I still have areas in my life that I have emotional triggers, or I have things that need refining by Christ. So when you are in the throes of motherhood, if you focus on all the hard parts, you're going to miss the real joy in that Jesus is using this. If you are offering it to him, Jesus, help me in being a mom. He's going to show you where you need to grow. He's going to show you where you need to be more humble, where you need to be more patient. And that doesn't necessarily make it easier, but when you see the Lord loving you enough to discipline and shape you, there is a joy in that. And then you can use God's gentle guidance as an example for how you can guide your own children to see their own need for him. And when you do that, that faith that you have that God is using all things, like Romans 8:28 says, using all things for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. When we see that, our faith grows and we become more like him, complete, lacking in nothing. So the real work of motherhood is the stuff that tests your faith, the stuff that tests your resolve and your strength, that makes you focus on looking to the Lord because it's not what you expected. I don't think anybody has ever become a mother and said, this is exactly what I thought it was going to be like. Because you never get the kid you imagine. You get the kid you were meant to have. You get the kid that God decided you needed and who needed you. But that's never going to be the picture perfect way you imagined as a teenager thinking about marriage and family and what that would look like. So the real work of motherhood is washing the dishes at midnight when nobody sees. Now, can I ask you for a favor? If you're enjoying this podcast, would you please like, share, subscribe, leave a review? It really helps get this in front of more people who need to be encouraged, that we can walk through this life as believers, having good evidence for what we believe, and then living it out. Thank you so much. So that brings us to the number one way that you can ruin motherhood. Miss the point. Our purpose here as believers is to glorify God and become more like him. Motherhood will do that. Now remember, right before Jesus is going to go to the cross, is going to bear the amount of pain and suffering that is unimaginable to me. He bends down and washes the feet of his disciples, including the man who's about to betray him. That's motherhood. That's the washing the dishes at midnight when nobody sees. It's cleaning up the puke, scrubbing the floor. sitting up with a kid who's got the stomach flu, having run out of sheets because you've had to wash them all. And you think, how can I ever manage this? And it's because God is making you more like Him. The unconditional, sacrificial love that sits with you in your mess and loves you anyway, and loves you when you're not capable of really loving back. Because children are very self-centered, self-focused. It takes a long time to be able to start seeing really outside of yourself. So loving your children the way God loves us is a real test of humility. You'll have to learn to become selfless in ways you've never even known existed as a mother. You know, I'm a single mom now as a widow, and a lot of what I do isn't noticed. And I struggle with wanting to point out to my daughter, do you see all the things that I do for you? But that isn't what Jesus wants us to do. In Matthew 6:3, it says, when you give to the poor and do acts of kindness, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. We need to translate that into how we act as moms. We don't need a false humility, but it's okay to remember that our service isn't about us, and that we don't need our husbands or kids to notice the things we're doing to do them well. Colossians 3:23 through 24 says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. Focus on working as if He were wearing the clothes that you are folding or eating the meal that you're preparing, right? So we want to recognize that it is Jesus we're serving. It is God we're glorifying with what we're making, with what we're doing, with the house we're cleaning. If you're struggling, ask God, why is this upsetting me? What am I struggling with? What area of my heart needs refining or cleansing? What sin do I need to confess here? Is it pride? Is it arrogance? Is it selfishness? Is it laziness? I really struggle with laziness. I want to sit and think deep thoughts and read books. I don't always want to get up and mop the floor and clean the house. God has had to show me that there's a balance and how to use my time effectively and how to know when it's clean enough. I used to really struggle with perfectionism and finding that balance of it's clean, it's glorifying to God, but it's lived in. Whatever that looks like for you, you might be on the other end and struggle to keep things neat. You might still be struggling with perfectionism. Ask God to show you where that balance is. Ask Him to show you how you can be better glorifying Him. Because when you are glorifying Him through your motherhood, your family will notice. And you don't have to draw attention to it because they will see God's love shining through you. And God will always see you. And today, for Mother's Day, it's really important that you just celebrate being a mom. Whatever that looks like at your stage, whether it's reliving all the memories of your children when they were little because they're adults and have their own lives, whether you're in the deep throes of a newborn and you don't remember what day it is and you're pretty sure you put your pants on backwards because you haven't slept in 3 days. Being a mom is a gift, and it's a gift not everyone gets. I got to be a mom through adoption. There are some people that will never have their own children and can't adopt, and they would give anything to experience what you're experiencing. And that doesn't make it easy, but hopefully it reminds you to be grateful. Celebrate the messy breakfast in bed. Celebrate the fact that your kids made you cards with glitter that will take you longer to clean up than it would take you to enjoy the card. Because I promise you someday you're going to miss all those little things. If you've got a unruly teen who gives you a groggy Happy Mother's Day through half-closed eyes on the way to the coffee pot, that's okay too. Because today you should celebrate the fact that God chose you to shepherd the heart of these little people and look for ways to do that well. Enjoy the work that God has given you to glorify Him, and just enjoy Mother's Day. Now, I hope you had a good Mother's Day. I hope that this helps you see the joy in being a mom, in celebrating, learning to be selfless. Obviously your family should still be grateful and honor you and respect you, but that's on them. That's their side of the table, so to speak. Your side of the table is to glorify God and love them well. Be humble and gracious and kind and patient and loving. And it's a tall order, but with the Holy Spirit shaping you, you can grow as a mother. None of us are ever going to be perfect. There are certainly things about myself that I wish I could change or do differently. I wish I was more spontaneous and less structured. But we can allow God to work in our hearts to change the things that need changing and embrace the things that are just part of who we are. Because God knew that when He gave us the kids we have. So as long as you are seeking His face in what you're doing and making sure that you are pointing your children to Him, I think you're doing it right. Until next time, keep seeking truth, hold fast to faith. Never be afraid to ask the tough questions, because God has answers.